Title: Deadly Home Invasion. It was a quiet night in the quiet suburb of Sandy Springs, Georgia. The streets were deserted and most people were fast asleep in their beds. But in one house, a family was about to experience a terrifying nightmare. The Johnsons, a family of 4, were all asleep in their beds when they were awakened by the sound of breaking glass. They had been targeted for a home invasion. 2 masked men had broken into the house through a back door and were now making their way upstairs. The Johnsons were trapped. The father, John, jumped out of bed and grabbed a baseball bat from his closet. He rushed downstairs to confront the intruders. As John rounded the corner at the bottom of the stairs, he came face to face with one of the masked men. The man was holding a gun. "Don't move," the man shouted. John raised the baseball bat in defense. "Get out of here," he shouted. But before John could swing the bat, the masked man fired his gun. John was shot in the chest and collapsed to the ground. The other masked man ran upstairs and burst into the Johnsons' bedroom. He found John's wife, Mary, and their 2 young children, Sarah and Michael, asleep in bed. "Give us all your money and jewelry," the masked man demanded. Mary was terrified. She didn't know what to do. "Please don't hurt us," she begged. The masked man reached for Mary's necklace. She tried to pull away, but he was too strong. He ripped the necklace off her neck and threw it to the ground. Then, the masked man turned his attention to Sarah and Michael. He grabbed Sarah by the arm and pulled her out of bed. "Let her go," Mary cried. But the masked man ignored her. He dragged Sarah out of the bedroom and down the stairs. Michael, now awake, started to cry. Mary ran to comfort him. Suddenly, they heard a loud noise downstairs. It was the sound of a gunshot. Mary froze in fear. She didn't know what had happened. A few moments later, the masked man who had dragged Sarah downstairs returned. He was alone. "Where's Sarah?" Mary asked. The masked man didn't answer. He just stared at her with cold, dead eyes. Then he raised his gun and fired. Mary was shot in the head. She fell to the ground, dead. The masked man then turned his gun on Michael. Michael screamed in terror. But before the masked man could pull the trigger, there was a loud crash from the front door. Police had arrived. The masked man heard the police and fled the scene. Police found John Johnson lying dead at the bottom of the stairs. They also found Sarah's body in the living room. She had been shot multiple times. Michael was the only survivor of the attack. He was unharmed, but he was traumatized by what he had witnessed. The police launched a massive investigation into the home invasion. They were eventually able to apprehend the 2 masked men. The men were charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. They were both convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Johnsons' deaths were a tragedy that shook the entire community. It was a reminder that even in the safest of places, no one is immune to violence. The police investigation into the Johnsons' home invasion continued for several weeks. Detectives interviewed witnesses, reviewed surveillance footage, and searched for any other evidence that could lead them to the suspects. Eventually, the police were able to identify the 2 masked men who had carried out the home invasion. They were known gang members named Carlos Martinez and Luis Rodriguez. The police obtained warrants for Martinez and Rodriguez's arrest. They raided their homes and found stolen property from the Johnsons' house, as well as guns and ammunition. Martinez and Rodriguez were both arrested and charged with multiple counts of murder, attempted murder, and home invasion. They were both convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Johnsons' deaths were a tragedy that left a lasting scar on the Sandy Springs community. But the arrest and Garcia was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder and home invasion. She was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The arrest and conviction of Garcia brought a sense of justice to the Johnsons' family and friends. It also showed that no matter how long it takes, justice will eventually be served. The police arrested and convicted the 3 suspects involved in the Johnsons' home invasion. Carlos Martinez, Luis Rodriguez, and Maria Garcia were all sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The Johnsons' deaths were a tragedy, but their family and friends found some closure knowing that the people responsible for their deaths had been brought to justice. The case also served as a reminder of the importance of home safety and security. Here are some tips for staying safe in your home. Install a security system that includes alarms, motion detectors, and door and window sensors. Keep your doors and windows locked, even when you are home. Trim bushes and trees around your home so that burglars can't hide. Get to know your neighbors and watch out for each other's homes. If you see something suspicious, report it to the police. By following these tips, you can help to protect yourself and your family from home invasion.